Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick. It's a Westworld appendix, if you will. We've added on one extra recap because we want to talk about the theming and theme park nature of the show. Tim, Bibbs, please welcome Dave Cobb to What the Flick. He's with Thinkwell, a designer of theme park attractions and interactive experiences. That's the word I wanted,
That's
experiences.
Experience design.
So this is your bread and butter. We've talked a little bit about how Westworld kind of fits into real life stuff. You know, early on somebody complains about how it used to be better, and that's every time I ever go to a theme park with theme park nerds, it's always used to be better.
Yeah.
I would love to hear just kind of your overview of in looking at this show. Do they get it right? Do they touch upon the concerns of the theme park industry for creating this kind of experience for customers?
I think so. I think what's really cool about the show is we reference the original film all the time. We say, how much can we be like Westworld, right? So
without the killing part.
Without the killing part, right. But without the evil robots. But then again, that's part of the conflict of the show. So would you build that into a themed experience? That's a whole other issue. But I think it's all leading there, but I think you're going to see it pretty sanitized from what you have on a cable show, right? Mm-hmm. It may not be overtly about sex and death, but the idea that you are, as a guest, not just paying a ticket to walk in, but sort of invited into it, is a trend that's happening now. I mean, it's happening in theme parks right now.
Such as?
Such as, well, first off, you have things like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which is literally like stepping into the films. It's not a big sign over the archway that says, Harry Potter World, Harry Potter Ride. You're in it. Right? Yeah. And so you see kids there all the time in school robes, right? And one time I walked in and there was a bunch of kids in school robes at the Three Broomsticks with their nose in books, and they were really young. They were like junior high school kids. And I asked them what they were doing, and they said their homework. They went to junior high near the park, and they had season passes, and their parents let them cosplay their real homework at a fake school.
That's awesome.
Like, that's happening, right? You have things like Disney bounding, which is not really cosplay, but in a Disney park, it's because they don't allow costumes on adults. You have people that put together street clothes, but styled through the lens of a Disney character. And it's a way for them, because, user-created content has changed every form of entertainment, but you can't make your own theme park, right?
Yeah.
But
yet.
Not with that attitude.
But you can make the theme park your own, which is what people are doing with things like that.
Well, like, was it Dandy Day? What's the thing you do at Disney?
Dapper Day.
Dapper Day.
Created by a buddy of mine, and it's inspired by the old concept art for Disneyland that used to have, guys in suits and hats and women in dresses and toddlers wearing, two-piece Chanel outfits. And like, wouldn't it be great if Disneyland was treated like the sort of upscale entertainment it was designed to be? So rather than just t-shirts and jeans and flip-flops. And so that's a whole thing now where people show up and sort of role play for the day in finery. A more specific example, though, is right down the street at Knott's Berry Farm here. They did a thing last summer called Ghost Town Alive. And they took their entire ghost town area, which is real old Western buildings that had been assembled from the 1940s on after all these ghost towns closed, because the guy who started Knott's Berry Farm, Walter Knott, was this huge Western fan. And so they, back in like the 50s when Knott's Berry Farm started, they used to have like old movie cowboys and old ranch hands would come in costume, just show up and sort of play amongst everyone. And so Walter Knott started inviting him in. And so they stopped doing that a long time ago, but this past summer, Ghost Town Alive was a scripted narrative with a cast of about 25 actors, I think. A scripted narrative across the arc of a day. And you were a visitor to town, and you could participate and lean into it as much as you wanted to. And they would give guests things to do, packages to deliver, and there was a whole bad guy aesthetic that this bad guy was coming to take over the town. It was all very family friendly. Nobody got shot, but it was playing off the current trends of things like cosplay and role playing and an audience that wants to interact, because we have 3 generations now that have been trained to want to participate in their entertainment.
There's this family-friendly angle to a lot of the theme parks that we have, and yet Westworld is very much for adults to get off on their own fantasies. And yet I hear about people, like Lionsgate was talking about doing an amusement park of some sort involving the Hunger Games franchise, which is a nightmare dystopia, in which people are oppressed and forced to kill one another.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate that it might be cool to walk around in those environments, but it doesn't sound fun. Or when they're talking about putting like a Star Wars land, like a proper Star Wars land in Disneyland, again, a significant amount of Star Wars takes place under fascist rule. So like all those, it's fun fun when you're in like a Comic-Con and there's some stormtroopers hanging around, but when they're supposed to be in character, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with it.
Yeah, they have. I mean, Darth and the stormtroopers walk around Disneyland and Tomorrowland right now, and it's like, I
see kids masks with like Darth Vader and like Mickey Mouse ears, and I'm just like, that's Space Hitler. He killed children by hand and like blew up a planet. He's like as evil as it gets, and you're putting Mickey Mouse ears on that?
I just, digression. We were at the Rogue One premiere, and they had a have your picture taken with Darth Vader or with the stormtroopers station set up. And like if you had a cocktail in your hand, they made you put it aside and not have it in the photo. And I said, oh, so Darth Vader can like commit genocide and destroy an entire planet, but he does not touch alcohol. Like, what are the standards here? I don't even get it.
Well,
anyway.
But my point is that there's an odd balance being struck here where you want to have those elements of danger or villainy, but you can't go too far.
I think if something like Westworld appears in the far future, because technology's not, there's a couple of things about technology that they're assuming for the show. You know, battery life. How long are these things around? You know, wetware, bioengineering of organic components and robotics. It's not really there yet. But if it ever happens, I think it'll be in service of fantasy more than the baser instincts of what Westworld is presenting. Not that that won't be there, and maybe there will be very, very exclusive secret millionaires who create their own theme parks, but that's the biggest thing is there are people who would pay money for a Westworld-style experience, but it all boils down to, well, how much money would they make, right? Like Disney wants a certain profit on every attraction they do, and at the end of the day, it's a business, and the risks of it outweigh the benefits without appealing to the widest possible audience.
There's this underrated movie I like called Gamer.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the elements of Gamer is this sort of Second Life, The Sims type thing, but where the actual participants are people. And you control the people in this sort of strange, almost theme park-like environment. And I wonder sometimes if all of this trouble, like if you don't mind not actually stabbing a robot, there's really not that much in Westworld that you need the robots for. This could just be elaborate role-playing at a Renaissance
with
fair.
people, right? And that's the thing. Renaissance fairs predate it. Like I said, there's current trends happening.
Civil War reenactors.
Civil War reenactors. I mean, it all goes back to wanting to be immersed in some sort of world or history. And I think if I'm going to pay money to do it, I think most people are going to lean towards, I want to do something fantastical that I can't do in the real world. Is that killing people? I don't know. I really can't answer that. I mean, I think that obviously when you're playing a video game, there's tons of games that ask you to cross that line. There's even some that ask you to have sex with people. But are you going to...
on.
I know, right?
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. But is that going to translate into a real world experience? I think there will be an audience for it. I just don't know if it'll be the widest audience.
Well, what's the next step? Because they have things like that, like those escape rooms.
Oh yeah.
And that takes like the puzzle solving like element of it, which I was really interested in. The Man in Black's character wanted to solve the maze.
Yeah.
Like he saw that there was more to this world. He was wrong, but he saw that there was more to it, and he wanted to figure it out. He wanted to get at the narrative, behind the narrative. Are there any other parks that are doing stuff like that? What's the next step for that?
Is there like secret stuff at Disneyland that you have to know people to get into?
Well, there's like Club 33, which is the exclusive club upstairs in New Orleans Square, which you have to have a membership for, and
Well, there's this whole like wand bracelet business now, right? Where
Harry Potter does a thing where you can buy a $35, $40 wand and interact with the environment and cast spells and learn to cast spells as you walk around the park, which is neat.
About that. That's cool.
Disney, of course, has these things called magic bands that are basically RFID wristbands that act as your ticket and your room key if you're staying at a hotel, and you can put fast passes on your phone, and it integrates with this whole mobile experience.
I've used those; they're real convenient.
Which is great, and they're doing some experiential stuff. They've got a couple of rides, like I think Small World. It'll say if it's your kid's birthday, it'll say "Happy Birthday, Dave" as they leave the ride, like on a screen. But they're just experimental at that point. The bigger picture behind that, and it's really the infrastructure behind something like Westworld, is big data, right? If everybody's wearing these things, after 10 years, 20 years of data of people moving through a theme park, they're going to have metrics and they're going to have an insight to guest behavior and what they want in a very different way than we have now. And that's, I think, more what Westworld is looking at. It's not just the robots, it's the infrastructure behind the place and how they know what everybody's doing at every given moment. It's kind of, in a creepy way, it's allowing yourself into a police state, to say, but for services of entertainment, for knowing who you are and what you want to do. And there are other things that aren't theme parks that are doing this, things like Sleep No More, which is a show in New York that is a walk-through version of Macbeth, basically, but through the lens of like a Hitchcockian 30s movie. It's on 6 floors. It's over 100 rooms. You follow the performers around the space. It's got sex and murder and all the great things that Macbeth has. But you
decide.
You kind of decide what you want to see, and then you have things like, you know, Halloween Horror Nights and Not Scary Farm, these scare experiences that are really just mazes, but a couple of them are taking it a step further. Like Knott's had an experience that was called Trapped, and it was basically a puzzle room meets a haunt show. So you actually had to solve puzzles. It was like you were in the movie Saw, and you had to get out of things, and you paid extra for it. I paid $20 to go get this crap scared out of me for an hour and solve puzzles, and it was great. It was really cool.
Now, one of the things that we talked about with the show was I think the show even sort of lays it out there as sort of a, can you even believe it, is this notion of like a theme park that costs $40,000 a day. Does the 0.1% have something like that now, that they would lay out that kind of money for this sort of preferential experience?
In a way, it's already there. You have things like the Atlantis resorts in the Bahamas and in Dubai, which are very exclusive and have their own little experiences. You've got even SeaWorld has looked into this. They have a park called Discovery Cove in Florida, which is next to their main park. But what it really is it's a small scale, low capacity, high cost experience that guarantees you're going to interact with a dolphin and birds and all the animal collections in a very personalized sort of way. So there's experiments with it. The big challenge with theme parks is if you're going to have a success like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter or like the upcoming Star Wars land at Disney, it's capacity. Like, people think of theme parks as individual experiences, but they're not. They do like 2,000 people an hour. And how do you push 2,000 people an hour through Westworld? Like, the answer is, okay, it costs $40,000 to go. So yes, I think there will be an audience that will pay top dollar to have sort of customizable experiences. But to your point, do I need to do that with robots? Not quite yet. I think you could probably do it with actors and have a very good experience anyway.
I think there's also a design aspect where you need to make sure that there's enough material out there that is appealing enough to a large enough group of people that not everyone's on the same ride.
Yeah.
We've all been to like that one part of Disneyland. We're like, oh, the other attraction's broken down, so now we're only on the Indiana Jones.
Right,
you know, like the Tiki Room just isn't packing them in today. So like so I think but there's this incredible design aspect to a lot of theme parks. I think about Disneyland and how the original park has, I think Disney called them weenies.
Weenies, which draw you into each land. They're sort of a visual signpost for you to look in and see. You look down Main Street and it's the castle. You look into the castle and you see a spinning carousel. You look into Tomorrowland and you see jets spinning around. You look into Frontierland and you see the pirate ship or the giant steamship going by. You look into Adventureland, you don't see anything because it's a left turn. It's an adventure, right? Like, so it's subtle psychology that sort of draws you into these things. My big question when I watch Westworld is, what are the kids doing? Because you saw kids on the trains. You saw a kid on the train.
There was the one kid who talks to Dolores, of the black family,
right?
Like the only black family that we saw.
Right, right. Is it just like horse skills and like Western camp?
Yeah.
Why would they not have like a separate Westworld for kids? That's what I'm wondering.
Right.
Like,
and what would that
why would you have them around all the horror?
That'd be Lord of the Flies, basically. It'd be like a giant simulation.
They had
watch that.
They had that reality show, wasn't it? Where it's like, oh, a bunch of kids. Like, what happens if only kids were around and didn't like one of them drink turpentine or something? And,
Right,
like,
I think so. Well, and it's like, here's the kids' Westworld. By the way, 1 in 8 of you will get diphtheria. You know, like I don't know if the Old West was a lot of fun for children necessarily.
They found a way to simulate dysentery. I don't know.
Westworld didn't even really dive into what the female experience is. We saw the one female guest.
Yeah.
Well, there's the Rodrigo Santoro robot. So draw your own conclusions. Yeah.
It's fun to be had.
Yeah,
it does
Charlotte
seem like
had
this.
some fun.
It does seem like it's targeted at a male demographic.
I want to know what's
It's
happening.
male
I wonder
fantasy.
what's happening at the hotel. Midway through, we got the hotel, and I'm like, I could see where after about 3 days, you're like, I need a fucking shower, you know, and you want to go to the state of the art. But
got some grind on you.
Exactly. So I'm just exactly. So I'm wondering what that's before you're gonna see that later. Sort of like, here's a place to get back to modernity.
I want to go to that hotel
for 2
too.
seconds.
That looked amazing.
Just get on the Wi-Fi and then go back to Westworld for a while.
But they also have. Here's the thing: we find in the last episode, there's Samurai World.
Right.
And much
Right.
like in the original Westworld, they had medieval world,
Yeah.
Roman world,
Yeah.
there was future world in the sequel.
I figured, I assumed that was for like, well, the Asian tourist market is going to be gigantic. Like, we're not going to let that pass us by.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
But like, is all of this, is there a maze in every single one of those theme parks? Is this happening all the time everywhere? Was there another Ford that got killed in like Samurai World? Like, I don't understand. Like that same day? It just
all
seems like
parallel.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like it's a lot. It's a lot to cover. Like, how do you like, what's the focus? Like,
Well,
what do you,
I mean,
what do you
obviously,
do?
the crux of that show is the moral question about what do we do when the hardware we create is sentience, right? And that's a bigger question with robotics. I think theme parks are mostly going to avoid that discussion for the most part, because they do now. I mean, we don't go to Disneyland for challenging drama,
Or
right?
empathy for the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right. And we don't even go on roller coasters for safety. We go because fear minus death equals thrills, right? They're safe enough, but they still scare the crap out of you. So I think a Westworld style experience practically will do one of two things. Either it'll be squeaky clean and it'll be in reinvention, right? Let's take the Western theme of Westworld just for argument's sake.
Right.
It's either going to be a squeaky clean version like that, or like what they did at Knott's, which was really charming and great.
A Gene Autry movie.
Right, exactly. Or it's going to be meta. It's going to be Westworld. It's going to be I go and I play to be in the Old West and the robots attack and I realize I'm in danger. Like, there's nothing saying that we couldn't do that, because that's what theme parks do now. Every good theme park attraction, basically the plot is, let's do something fun. Holy crap, something went horribly wrong, right? Like Jurassic Park and
Mr.
Star
Toad goes to
Tours
hell.
and Mr. Toad Goes to Hell. Like, all of them are usually need a conflict in them. And so...
And that's what the Man in Black's whole pursuit is, that he wants the fear with death.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
he wants the thrills where he can where somebody is going to shoot
now
back
we're getting
finally.
somewhere, yeah.
If Westworld continues to do well, and HBO, whoever, they come to you and they say, we want to do it for real. We want to do it as real as we can. We just want to make Westworld, and people can go to Westworld and they can experience this whole horrifying nightmare, free of irony. Like, how do you? What's your choice? What do you do? Where do you start?
I think they would be well served to do an experience that is the experience of the show, not the experience of Westworld, which is, yes, you are going there, but you know that there's this lingering danger. That's why we watch the show, right? We know the robots are going to attack.
Some people thought that was spoilers.
If you do it without robots, you do it with actors. Do you have actors pretending to be robots that become humans?
Nowadays, I think you could, yeah, because
Okay.
that's about the only tech that would work right now. Robots in a theme park right now are dumb pieces of plastic and metal that do they're attached to the floor, and there's a computer in back telling them what to do. They don't necessarily use AI. But then you have things that are sort of a hybrid. You have, if you've been on the Monsters, Inc. ride, there's a Roz figure at the end, and she sort of talks at you at the end like she does to Mike Wazowski, and that's actually a performer backstage. He's not talking in a microphone, it's a dialogue tree. Like, it's pre-recorded, and he can, through a camera, see who's in the ride vehicle and say something that applies to you.
Like the Mr. Potato Head. Which is
Mr.
going
Potato
into
Head
the
does
Toy
the same
Story.
thing, and even if you go see Crush the Turtle from Finding Nemo at Disney parks, it's a CGI live using a game engine CGI animation with a live performer backstage saying, "Hey, dude, little dude in the front row with the red hat." And so it's that crossing the boundary of what you expect from a theme park. And I think as long as you can do that effectively with Westworld and cross that boundary a little, and that boundary to me is not that I get to kill or fuck a robot. I mean, that's part of it. It's obviously the appeal. It's the robots are not here to be nice. Right? You need that conflict. You need that moment. And I think you can create a really compelling experience about Westworld that is as immersive and as much simulacrum as Westworld really is supposed to be. But then, if we're doing it for HBO, it's going to be a branded experience where they want to promote the show. I mean, that's what all of these things are now. We live in a world where IP is driving these stories. And the IP of Westworld isn't just live out your fantasy. The IP of Westworld is live out your fantasy, and there are conflict and costs associated with that, both physically and financially.
Were there moments in the show that felt to you like almost an inside joke for people who really know this world, like know theme stuff?
Yeah, there was an episode, I think it was episode 3 or 4, where you see two guys working on some of the older robots backstage. Those two guys are actually from a company here in town called Garner Holt that actually does animatronics for the theme park industry.
Oh, funny.
They built the robots for that scene, or they pulled something out of their warehouse or whatever, and they said, "Oh, why don't you guys just put on lab coats?" And they had them in there. The scene came on, I was like, "Oh my God, those guys! I know them." So yeah, and things like, the terminology they use, like guests, and they're not customers, they're guests, right? They're
hosts.
They're hosts. On stage versus backstage. Disney doesn't say in park and out of park. It's you're on stage when you're in the park because everybody that works there is part of a theatrical presentation, So I think there's certain things that they got really, really right. I mean, the whole arrival sequence on the train and this feeling of this high-end customized experience where you get to pick your hat and it's the real world version of making your avatar for a game, right? Like that whole scene was really awesome. And I could see that happening. I mean, and again, it happens now. If you go to Knott's, you go get an old timey photo and you get to pick out cowboy wear. And it's, again, just for a photo with you posing with a gun. But take that 2 steps further and thousands of dollars more expensive and, maybe.
And the idea of narrative is something that you guys bring to just about every, if it's a dark ride or if it's a whatever, like there is a beginning, middle, end, like thing that people are supposed to be experiencing, right?
For the most part, I mean, a lot of Disney attractions are what we call book report rides because they're basically,
what the movie
reviewing what the movie is and reminding you of the moments you love. It's hard to tell a full story in a 3-minute dark ride that you don't know already. But really good dark rides sort of reinvent that a little. They did a Frozen one recently at Epcot where it's after the events of the movies and they tell a whole new story with new lyrics and it's pretty great, but it wouldn't work unless you already knew the film. So story is a tricky one in theme parks because theoretically in a place like Disneyland, everything tells a story. Every sign, every view, every smell, In reality, what's the story of Space Mountain? What's the story of...
Well, you're in space and there's a mountain.
And there's, right. What's the story of Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion or any of those classic attractions? There was a moment in time when they were really operetta. When they first started, they were things that they're tropes that you knew, and they were in a new form environmentally. In the 80s is when you started seeing things like Star Tours, where you are on a craft in that universe, and you get caught up in the Death Star battle. I rode that when it opened. I was 17, and all of a sudden, I'm in the trench battle in Star Wars. That was the coolest thing ever. But that was a sea change in terms of how we cast and invite you as a guest, and that is happening more and more now, where that dependency on the audience to want a bit of agency because they're raised with it in video games and role-playing and cosplay, that we have to sort of acknowledge that as designers now.
I could go on and on, but we have to wrap up. Any questions you guys didn't get
I
to
guess
ask?
we talked about what Westworld does right. What did they screw up hard? I realize they have to change some things for drama. They have to change some things for the premise of the show.
Right.
What is completely
least
just
plausible?
As someone who knows how it really, really works, what's the thing you're looking at like, oh, fuck off?
You know what? For the amount of money people are paying for that experience, they got it absolutely right. They got it better than, say, Jurassic World, which I have a list of problems that has in terms of how it treats a theme park experience. Like you put auto kill switches in all the dinos except the ones that can fly away. Like, what?
How about this? It takes place on Christmas and there's no Christmas themed stuff merchandise for
don't
anybody?
get me started on that.
Oh yeah. How about there's thousands of people at this resort and they don't have a bunker to keep them all in if something goes horribly wrong. Like, come on. But I think Westworld gets most of it right, but the ask it makes is one of scale, meaning cost scale per person, really, and sort of throughput, right? We know it's an exclusive experience, so that's a bit of a different thing. I think if they got anything really wrong, it's that I didn't really see in that world what your sort of relaxing experiences would be. Not back at the hotel, but like, what's eating and drinking like there? What's a restaurant experience? There was that one scene in the restaurant where we see them having a steak dinner. I wanted to see more of that. Like when you're on vacation, there's a certain number of things you want to do that don't involve shooting and fucking things, right? But
and where are the souvenirs?
I'd like to use a real bathroom instead of like a pan, personally. Right. I'd be willing to sacrifice disbelief to use a real bathroom.
Right. And so what was that experience, and what was the sort of what was the average Joe experience before the robots went bad? Like, I kind of wanted to see a little bit of that.
And I feel as though all theme parks have all these cost-saving measures. They do everything as cheaply or to an extent. You know what I'm saying? Right. But we see in Westworld all these hosts they're still going on their narratives. They still shoot each other in the head, even if there's no guests around.
Right.
And then we still have to repair those robots every single night and put them back out. Like, all of that costs money, and Westworld doesn't care about that at all.
No, and I was confused about what is the time cycle of those storylines. Like they play pretty fast and loose with, are these 24-hour periods? Is your visit multiple days?
And some of them
is
are
your
weeks
story
long.
multiple days?
Because
Some
they
of
bring
them are weeks
Hector in
long.
2 weeks early. Like,
Yeah,
oh my God, who's here for 2 weeks?
Yeah,
Just waiting for
right.
that
Besides the
storyline?
Man in
Oh
Black.
my God.
At what, 20,000 a day or something
40
like
40,000
a day? Like,
Yeah.
right. I think it's going to be a long time till you see that kind of spend, not just for, I mean, hey, there are people now who will spend that kind of money. Whether or not you have a company that has the infrastructure and ability and wherewithal to spend the massively billions of dollars more, because this is, to build something like Westworld is on a scale that it takes a lot of money to make that money back. And I think that's the biggest thing about the theme park industry. It's not just about, creating the newest thing. It's a business like anything else.
Right.
All right. Dave Cobb from Think Well, thank you for joining us. It's
Thanks
been
for
very
having me.
illuminating. You guys, thanks for watching this season, and we'll be back with Westworld Season 2 in 2018. So,
Oh, good, we have time.
yeah.
Shogun
So,
World and Samurai World URLs both trademarked by.
really?
Really?
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Well, anyway, happy holidays. We'll see you then.